Join me today as I paint Fisherman's Paradise. This is one of Bob's pictures. I'll do my take on it. If you're new to my channel, my name is Carl. I'm a Bob Ross certified painting instructor. I hope my videos are helpful to you as an artist, or maybe they provide you some relaxation. Be on the lookout as I will be posting some of my original paintings for sale on my website in the very near future. Let's start painting. We have our standard 16 by 20 canvas. I've covered it in a very thin coat of liquid white. The liquid white is wet so we can move and slide paint. Here are the colors you'll need to paint along with me today. With a little Indian yellow on your brush, this is a 1-inch brush, I'm just going up and doing some X strokes and just kind of blending with the liquid white. Again, the more you go over this, the softer it'll be. And then here I went in with a little bit of cadmium yellow, kind of going around the Indian yellow. I'm really looking to create a glow in the sky. That's the goal. So again, just doing some X strokes. I have some fairly firm pressure. I'm just really getting that paint into the canvas. Blending and moving paint. And then I created an orange color. So with a little bit of Indian yellow and bright red, I'm going on the outside of the yellow colors. And we're just kind of looking to wrap around. Again, creating that illusion of the glow. And then here's some bright red, mostly bright red. And again, we're going on the outside of those yellow tones. Just again, scrubbing in color using the X strokes. And again, this is a variation of what Bob's picture is going to look like. Mine's more vibrant. It was just kind of the mood I was in. And you can see here, I'm just kind of working back through the sky, being very careful not to take the darker color into the yellows. With a mixture of Van Dyke Brown and dark sienna, I'm just going up into the corners, down to the bottom corner, just to kind of finish the wraparound effect. And here I added a little bit more Van Dyke Brown. But you can start to see that kind of glow in the sky coming through. And with a clean 2-inch brush, you could use a 1-inch brush, and a little bit of titanium white. I'm going to start tapping really into that yellow region. I want to brighten it to create that illusion of a glow. And I'm just doing some X strokes, and I'm going to start working out. Again, being careful not to bring any of the dark color back through. But I'm going to start working out, and it creates this beautiful glow in the sky. You could spend so much time just creating the softness you want. And then here I'm going to start working slowly between the yellows and the oranges. Just start scrubbing and blending. That's the beauty of the liquid white we have on our canvas. We can move and slide paint. I do have a video on applying liquid white, so I'll put that in the description. You want to make sure you have a nice, proper amount of liquid white on the canvas. But look at the softness we can create. Again, you can take this to whatever level you want. I think for this painting, I wanted it to be pretty soft in the transitions. And then here I'm being very careful again, going outward. And look at the depth in the sky. Just a beautiful, warm, glowing sky. And here with some very light pressure, I'm just softening the sky and removing some of the brush strokes. For the background foothill, a little bit of dark sienna, white, and bright red. That mixture to create this color. And I want to create the illusion of just a distant foothill back into the water. So we'll have a lake. I'm just tapping with the brush. And then if you notice here, I'm lifting upward to create the illusion of distant trees. Extra details, things that are happening in the background. And then we're going to create a reflection. So I'm going to be pulling down. Make sure you're pulling straight down. That'll help make it look more realistic. And I don't need a lot of detail back here. I just want these to be just some indications. And then I have the 2-inch brush, again, just softening the reflection, and then I'm going to go straight across. Very light pressure, kind of like a whisper. Now for the distant water line, I just took a little bit of some of the white and yellow. I want this to be very, very soft. I don't want this to stand out too much. You could do a brown mixture if you wanted to, just very subtle, just to put the indication of a shore. Now moving forward, I added some Van Dyke brown, and then you'll notice here I just brought back a little bit more red. And again, I'm just tapping, kind of even sliding the brush. This is going to be a foothill coming forward. And by adding the darkness to it compared to the background foothill, you add that layer of depth to your picture. So if you're looking to add depth, that's a simple way to do it. Adding more tree indication, so I'm just pulling upwards. And then notice I'm gonna add a little reflection to the water with this layer. It's always good to work in layers. And then you'll see I'm gonna add another layer of foothills coming up here. And all I did was add a little bit more Van Dyke brown. But look at the depth that creates. Just that subtle change. And I'm gonna go ahead and lift up those tree indications. And then here, because this layer is in front of that previous layer, I'll pull down some reflections. And it's a little bit darker, so it pushes this foothill forward compared to the background foothill. So just some very subtle reflections. Go across light pressure. Look how quickly we can create that illusion of a reflection. And then here I'm just brightening up the water lines just a touch as they move forward. And for this color, it's going to be similar to the previous foothill, just a dark brown color. You could use the same color, honestly. And I'm taking the fan brush and turning it vertically and just tapping, creating the illusion of those distant treetops. Tapping and kind of sliding the paint. And moving down, we'll go down towards the lower center. When we're doing these trees, it's important to vary the heights. If you notice right now, my trees are kind of in a straight line. And that looks too perfect. So I think it's important to vary the heights. You can see here, I'm just going back through and kind of randomizing the heights a little bit more. It helps break it up. And with a 1-inch or 2-inch brush, I think the 2-inch brush for this works better. And I brought in a little bit of titanium white. And we're going to start creating a layer of mist. And we'll work this in. And on a side note, if you do enjoy my content, it really helps my channel if you click the like button and subscribe if you haven't. It really means a lot. So I'm just moving and sliding paint, being careful not to disturb the tops of the trees. So I'm just really working in that extra little white that I added. And we have the liquid white on the canvas. And I'm moving and blending. And look at the softness it's starting to create. So I'm just doing some final fluffing. And then here I'm taking a 1-inch brush with basically the same brown color. And I'm pulling it into a reflection. So straight down. I'm trying to mirror just a rough indication of where those trees are. So straight down. And look at how quickly we can create a quick reflection and go across light pressure. Now for the kind of grass area, I'm taking a little bit of a darker mixture. So this is a darker mixture with a little bit more Van Dyke brown. Maybe a hint of black. And I'm just tapping with the fan brush, thinking of the lay of the land. And if you choose to follow along with me, you're going to have your own vision and your own style as you paint, just like I'm doing with Bob's picture. With a fan brush, I'm just adding some evergreen trees. So you can see I'm using the right corner of the brush and just tapping in a trunk, and then I start moving down with the right corner, adding a little bit more pressure as you go down. But look at the layer of mist in the background, how it really separates the grasses from the distant trees. And again, that's another way you can add depth to your picture. Really makes those trees stand out. And we're just giving the trees some friends. They can hang out and enjoy this beautiful scenery. So I'm going to put in a few more trees here, and I'm just starting to shape the middle ground. Ooh, there's a big tree. Now when you're doing the big trees, as you're going down the tree, you're using the right side of the brush. It'll start to go towards more of the center to the right portion of the brush. And then you're going to branch out a little bit more. So I'm just adding a few more here. But I like the misty areas coming through. I left some of those gaps, and I personally really like that. So I'm just bringing the grass down here, down, kind of creating that slight left drop. And then here I'm putting in some reflections again. So we're working in multiple layers with the reflections. So this is just with the fan brush pulling straight down. A little bit smaller as I move towards that center. And it's optional, but with regards to the evergreen trees, you can just leave it the way it is, or you can put some indications like I'm doing here of some evergreen reflections. Now notice I'm not very detailed, but I'm just scrubbing in some subtle indications. Some of this will be covered up. We won't see it. But if we do, this can add to some realism of your pictures too. And then very soft, just pull down 2 hairs and some air. And then I wipe the brush off. You can make sure it's clean and dry. And then go across like a whisper. But that quickly we have such a beautiful reflection. For the highlights, I am starting with a little bit of the bright red and a little bit of brown. And I'm pulling in, so when I do the grasses back there, you'll see I'm just pulling a little color down into the reflections. And I'm working in layers. Don't forget to leave some of the dark. So I'm mixing in the dark color with that highlight. I kind of blend it backwards. A little bit of reflection color. And then here I added a little bit of cadmium yellow, just add a little bit of orange flavor to it. But look at the dark areas I left. I think that adds to that depth. And then here's a little bit of white added in, just to add some brightness. And you can change up the flavor as much as you'd like. As Bob would say, it's your world. And then here I added some of that kind of reddish orange color. Just some subtle indications. I wanted some subtleties on the evergreen trees. So just using the right part of the brush, tapping in some indications. I think that adds some warmth. And remember, when you paint, you should paint stuff that makes you happy. And here I'm just adding some more highlights. Some of these will be covered when we get more forward with our cabin and whatnot. And then here I'm adding some reflections back into the water. And then again, pull down very lightly. And then go across. Look at the layers we created with the reflections. We did multiple layers, and I think it just adds to the depth into a picture. With a little bit of cadmium yellow and white, maybe a hint of red, I'm just creating the illusion of some water lines. And notice as they come forward, I want them to be a little bit brighter, keeping the palette knife straight across. And then here, we got to make a big decision. We're going to put in a cabin. So I'm just scraping out the shape of a cabin, just creating some indications, removing some color. We're not fully committed yet, but I'm starting to create a landing zone for the cabin. With Van Dyke Brown, I'm just scrubbing in some color and starting to shape the cabin. I'm just using light pressure, letting the paint just kind of fall off the knife. The canvas takes what it wants. Take your time when you're creating the cabins. Think about the perspective, how big or small you want the cabin. This one's sitting right on the shoreline. And again, we'll have a little dock coming out, so this will be right on the dock. With a little bit of dark sienna, a little bright red and white, maybe a hint of Van Dyke Brown, we're going to start shaping. Very light pressure. I'm just letting the paint come off, and I'm dropping straight down. And maybe that light is hitting that front side of the cabin. And then here we just have a little dark shadow side. For the roof, I used a little bit of gray and red for the roof kind of tiles. And I'm just tapping, if you notice. So I'm tapping downward. So who knows? Maybe it's shingles. We don't know. Just some indications. Just tapping, leaving some of the dark show through. I think that looks really nice. And then a little bit on that side. And then here I added a little bit more white and some red just to brighten it. And just tapping, get the shape. And our cabin is coming to life. Now for the dock. I'm just going back to the Van Dyke brown and starting to shape the top of the dock. And then here's a little black for the door. We gotta put in a door. So I'm just going back to the dock, getting some shapes. Think of perspective. And then I'm just highlighting a little bit with some of the dark sienna and white and red. Just tapping maybe to create the illusions of boards, things happening. There. And then I'm going to add some posts. So back to the dark brown color. This is your bravery test. So just adding in some posts that are in the water. A little bit of bright red on the short part of the knife. And we're going to start shaping the posts. Going back to some of the highlight brown color on the dock. And then I'm going to take a little bit on the small part of the knife of red and a little white. And I just want those posts to stand out. So who knows, maybe there's a little bit of the warmer light. This is a way to get your posts to stand out. I added a little bit of yellow and white to this, just highlighting the right side. And then I'm putting a little back down into the reflection. And I added some of the dark color too. A whisper of a reflection, but creates the illusion nicely. Very soft. And I'm just scrubbing in maybe some ripples and things. Not much indication, but some stuff happening underneath the dock. Maybe some fish are splashing around. And then I'm adding some bright yellow and white a little bit farther out away from the shadow areas. But look at that quickly. We've got a beautiful cabin and dock. And just overlooking such a fun scene. And here I went back in just to shape up the forward side of the roof. I wanted it to be a little bit crisper. But in your world, you can add as many cabins as you'd like. I know in Bob's picture, he has some more. And then here I wanted to shape the sides of the dock just a little bit. So I added some more of the reddish color. And I'm not sure if this is realistic or not, but I just thought it stood out nicely. Now, going into the foreground, I wanted some bushes and maybe a fence. So I'm just tapping in some of the brown. This is brown and black, Van Dyke brown and black. And then I brought in a hint of red just to mix into the color, give it some variation. So this is the 1-inch brush, and I'm just tapping vertically. Just scrubbing in, getting some of the dark color. And when you're doing this, we don't want a straight line, so vary some of the heights. Now, one of my favorite brushes, especially recently, is the half round. I just think it creates the most beautiful bushes. Just tapped in some of the red highlights. With the knife, I'm going to put some indications of some fence posts. So just creating the shape. Maybe these are broken fence posts. We don't know, it's our world. Maybe there's just some old fence posts. They're just light pressure. Get some shape in there. And then with that brown, dark sienna and white and red, light pressure. Let the paint just break. And we got some light on the right side. Just very, very subtle. And save the dark. And then I put a little red on the top, just to make it pop on the fence posts. I think that fence posts add a nice touch into the foreground, complement the bushes nicely. There, little bit more red, and then I'm going back to the half round brush. I'd really encourage you to try this brush. So I'm thinned down the paint, so I tapped, kind of, when you tap, you want to tilt the brush upward, and I'm really focusing, you can see, on that top edge of the brush when I'm touching. See that? I'm tilting upward, and then leaving the dark show through. And then here's maybe some barbed wire. We don't know. I'm using walnut oil to thin the paint, so you could use walnut oil, you could use paint thinner. There, and just creating the illusion of some things happening. And then here, maybe this just drops down. Just drops down into the bushes. And then here I'm going to add just some little indications of, maybe it was the barbed wire or things just growing on the old fence. We don't know. Just some more details. You can add way more details than this. Spend lots of time. And I'm just going back, and right where that fence dropped down, I'm just adding some more brown color and then going back to the highlights. If it's not sticking, make sure you thin it down a little bit more. And then I added, if you notice there, I added a little bit of white into the red, and it just adds a little bit extra sparkle. But I'm loving the red bushes complementing this picture. And with the knife, I'm going to add some sticks and twigs. We'll just add some sticks and twigs. Simple way to add some extra details. We'll add a few more in the background. Just some indications here and there. I'm making them a little bit smaller back there. And with that, I think we have ourselves a finished painting, and I'm going to sign it. I hope you enjoyed this beautiful painting. Check out my website at carlvonartistry.com. Happy painting. See you next time.